I'm going to grab Bibles. I have them right here. We're going all in, ladies and gentlemen. We are going all in. All right, YouTube has established its connection. So I'm opening up YouTube and I'm going to do a search. Theology Central. Okay, I'm going to do that. We are live. It has established. We got that go. We got that to go. All right. Now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on webcast. We're the only ones broadcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the only ones. It is just us. Okay. Does that mean it's just I don't know. Is that dramatic? I don't know. Broadcasting, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We got that. Oh, we're doing a lot of work today. None of it is the work that needs to be done, but that's life. All right, we're looking at the map. Texas is in the house. Texas is represented on the map. That is nothing significant because it just represents me clicking on the links to test the audio. The audio sounds good. I'm going to take my Bible here. I got that one ready to go. I'm going to open up this other Bible. Going to have that one ready to go. We got Bibles open. All right. I think we're good to go. We'll do a refresh here. All right. I'm not going to wait. We're just going to see what we can do. All right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
3 minutes and 48 seconds is turning into 3 hours and 48 minutes of broadcasting. 3 minutes and 48 seconds is turning into 3 hours and 48 minutes. I know you're like, how does 3 minutes and 48 seconds turn into 3 hours and 48 minutes? Well, who are you listening to? If you know anything about me, you should know, well, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense that your 3 minute and 48 second devotional that you listen to turned into 3 hours and 48 minutes of you broadcasting about those 3 minutes and 48 seconds, because that's kind of what you do. But of course, it would not happen if someone out there, anyone, would say, whoa, settle down, Sally. Come on, you're broadcasting. You're already doing another broadcast. Settle down. You don't need to be broadcasting so much. Well, I do, and I need to be broadcasting a lot. I just don't need to be broadcasting necessarily about this because we're ignoring all the other things we need to do. But this is getting kind of interesting, isn't it? Maybe? All right. So if you don't remember, if I know it's only been just a little while ago when I was already broadcasting, but for those who may not know what's going on, let me catch you up. So last night, I ended up clicking play on a devotional entitled Jacob Leaned on the Top of His Staff. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. Simple, harmless enough. It caught my curiosity, and well, this has started a long discussion, right? It really got me into, because this idea of Jacob leaned on the top of his staff, the scripture for it was Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21. Let me open up my Bible to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21. Let me just read it to you to remind you. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21, we read these words from the KJV. Here we go. By faith, Jacob, when he was a dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped leaning upon the top of his staff. And after doing my initial review and giving some initial thoughts, I couldn't let it go. I never can. I kept thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. I've been thinking about it all night. And that just kind of raised this question. Well, wait a minute. Can you really understand Hebrews 11:21 apart from Genesis 48? Because Hebrews 11:21 is referencing what happened in Genesis 48. So I did an entire episode about understanding Hebrews 11:21 in light of Genesis 48. I think we did a pretty good job. We realized that Hebrews 11 is giving us kind of the faith moment. It's taking this Old Testament narrative, Genesis 48, pulling basically one thing from it, going, here's the faith moment. Here's faith in action kind of thing, all right? But Genesis 48 gives us the real substance and gives us the total narrative, all right? So when you kind of go through Genesis 48, when I was reading through Genesis 48, because what I did in the last broadcast is I decided to kind of read the major section of Genesis 48. I was conflicted, right? Do I read this during this episode? Do I not read it? I'm just going to be honest with you. I wasn't prepared necessarily to read it. And you saw that, or you heard that, because I kind of stumbled over some names of some places because I wasn't really prepared. I wasn't thinking I'm going to read Genesis 48 in this episode. I really wasn't thinking that. I thought I may reference a verse or here, but I wasn't really prepared to read the larger narrative. But then I just felt in the last episode, I need to read it. And once I read it, I kind of realized my mistake. I'm like, oh no, this just opened another door, because there's all these moving parts in Genesis 48. I really should have just focused in on the key element in Genesis 48 to make my point about a Hebrews 11:21, show you the faith moment, show you the significance of that, and then we could have wrapped it all up nice and clean. I'm done. But nobody was there to say, whoa, settle down, Sally. Nobody was there. I don't know why people keep calling me Sally, but nobody was there to stop me. So I opened my Bible and started reading in Genesis 48. And once I did that, I was like, wait a minute. Now, Hebrews 11 does not mention this in any way, shape, or form, but we have a reversal going on. We have a reversal of the birth order happening in Genesis 48. The younger son is receiving the blessing over the older, or over the firstborn. And I'm like, but wait a minute. So there's a reversal, but I think there's another reversal. I think there's a reversal inside of a reversal. I think that there's a subtle narrative reversal that doesn't ever get talked about. I think a lot of people see the reversal of, oh, the younger is getting the blessing over the older, but I think there's another reversal going on as well. I think there's a reversal inside of a reversal inside of a reversal. I think there's a lot of reversals going on in Genesis 48. And as I started looking at it, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And again, I don't want this to turn into a 15-part series, but here we are, like, there's so much going on here, and so we have to talk about it, all right? And if you just think about this kind of reversal that's happening within the reversal, just think about this, all right? So we have the younger receiving the blessing over the firstborn or over the older. That's a reversal. But we also have in the past, this is very important, Jacob, who's the one doing the blessing, in the past, he seemed to be the one who couldn't see beyond the immediate circumstance. He couldn't seem to see beyond the immediate circumstance. Where Joseph, his sons are the ones that are being blessed in Genesis 48. If you look in the past, Joseph seemed to be the one who could always see the bigger picture. He could see God at work. He could see God's providence. He could see beyond immediate circumstances. But in Genesis 48, while this other reversal is occurring, while the younger is being blessed over the older, there's another reversal occurring at the exact same time. Jacob suddenly sees the unseen. Jacob, by faith, is blessing these sons, talking about land, inheritance, and descendants. Even though they're in Egypt, he seems to see beyond. Even though he's weak and dying, he sees beyond all of that. Immediate circumstances, geographical location, and his own physical health to see God moving and working. But all of a sudden in Genesis 48, Joseph all of a sudden can't seem to see beyond the immediate blessing. So we have a reversal within a reversal. That's worth looking at, don't you think? So what we're going to do in this additional episode today is, I don't want to turn this into a series. I know I keep saying that. How many episodes before it becomes a series? I don't know. All right. I don't want it to do that, but I want to give us one complete episode right here explaining the significance of what Genesis 48 is doing, because it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. All right. And hopefully maybe this will help us understand Hebrews 11:21 even better, since that 3-minute and 48-second devotional is what led these 3 hours and 48 minutes of conversation. It's what started all of this in the first place. So are you ready to walk through this carefully with me? Are you ready to see the reversal within a reversal? That's why you tune into the Theology Central podcast. I see the reversals within a reversal. Now I sound like I'm a Gnostic. I see what nobody else sees. I have unknown knowledge. Okay, no, I'm not doing that. But I do see this reversal within a reversal. Hopefully you will see it. Hopefully you'll think it is as significant as I do. And hopefully I can give us some valid points about it, all right? So are you ready? Here we go. Let's look at Genesis 48, 13 through 20. Genesis 48, 13 through 20. I may read this a number of times in different translations. Let's start with this one. Genesis 48, let's start with 13 through 14. All right? I'm going to read specifically Genesis 48, 13 through 14. And Joseph took them both, that's his 2 sons, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand. Now, when it says Israel in this translation, that's referring to Jacob. So Joseph takes Ephraim in his right hand towards Jacob's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand unto Israel, or Jacob's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel, Jacob, stretched out his right hand, laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hand wittingly. Now, we'll jump to verse 17. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And Joseph said unto his father, Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. Verse 19, and his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people and also shall be great. But truly, his younger brother shall be greater than he. Wow. Now, I'm going to read it from another translation. See, we have this clear reversal going on here. A clear reversal going on here. But there's going to be a reversal within that reversal and a reversal within that reversal. You'll see all the reversals here in a minute. Let's go to Genesis 48. Let's read 13 through 14 in a different translation now. Here we go. Genesis 48, start in verse 13. Then he positioned the boys in front of Jacob with his right hand. He directed Ephraim towards Jacob's left hand, and with his left hand, he put Manasseh at Jacob's right hand. But Jacob crossed his arms as he reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. He put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, though he was the younger boy, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, though he was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said. Now the rest of that, The rest of that verse in verse 16 contains the words of the blessing. But if we go to verse 17, Joseph was upset. Now, please note, Joseph is upset about that. Come on. Does no one else see it? Joseph is upset about this? Come on. Does no one go, wait, what? All right, never mind. All right, if you don't get it, I will explain it in a minute. Or well, I don't know, a lot of minutes from now, but we'll get to it. But Joseph was upset when he saw that his father placed his right hand on Ephraim's head. So Joseph lifted it to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. No, my father, he said, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused. I know, my son, I know, he replied. Manasseh will also become great people, but his younger brother will become even greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations. All right, there I've read it twice from two different translations. Now, here's what you need to realize. Jacob knows what he's doing. Joseph clearly is objecting to what Jacob is doing. This reversal, the reversal right here, is intentional, it is deliberate, and it is theological. Now, this is the reversal. Now, we're going to have a reversal within the reversal, but this is the first reversal. It is intentional, it is deliberate, and it is theological. So, let's look at the main reversal. The younger over the older. Now, this is very important. We have to establish this basic movement first, all right? In the ancient world, I know if you've been to church for any length of time, you already know this, but that's okay. In the ancient world, and especially in the patriarchal narratives, right? Any of the narratives dealing with the patriarchs, the older son receives the inheritance, the authority, the blessing, and the birthright. But I mean, if you don't believe me, you can do this for yourself. Go through the book of Genesis. God disrupts this pattern over and over and over again. Abel over Cain, Isaac over Ishmael, Jacob over Esau, Judah over Reuben, Joseph over his brothers. Please note, Joseph. Now right there, see, wait, Joseph was over his brothers, but now Joseph is upset about what's happening. Oh, come on. You've got to see that. You've got to see that. That is crazy to me. That's what kind of jumps out at me. Now, just because it jumps out at me doesn't mean it's hermeneutically significant, but it's significant within the narrative, all right? And of course, we had David over his brothers, all right? But this happens throughout Genesis. So now in Genesis 48, we have Ephraim over Manasseh. This is a theological point. It's not a cultural accident. The blessing reversal, because we have a reversal here in the blessing. This is the first reversal. This is the main reversal here, right? The younger is being blessed over the older. The younger over the firstborn. This blessing reversal is a way in which God is saying, my covenant does not run according to human systems. My covenant does not run according to human systems of strength, of tradition, or of natural order. My choosing is sovereign, it is unexpected, and it's rooted in promise, not in biology of who's born first or who's born second. There's a sovereign choosing occurring. There's a sovereign plan occurring, and it's going against tradition. It may even go against culture. It may go against human reasoning because it's a sovereign plan and a sovereign choice. So Hebrews 11:21 sees the blessing as the supreme act of faith because Jacob proclaims the future of nations he's never going to see. He proclaims this blessing and a land he does not possess because he's living in Egypt and that's where he's going to die. So that this reversal is is it not an act of faith to even be doing it? He's doing a blessing in a reversed way by faith. Because this is God's choosing, not our choosing, not our ideas, not our way, not our thoughts, not our perspective. It doesn't matter our cultural upbringing or what we want. It's God's ways, and that's what is being demonstrated here. But beneath that reversal, so you got the reversal of the younger over the older, but beyond or beneath that reversal, there's kind of a more subtle, but I think kind of equally important, especially considering Hebrews 11:21 is showing this as a faith moment. So there's the first reversal, the younger over the older, God choosing in a way, and God's choosing, and this goes all the way into the New Testament. God chooses the weak over the strong, the foolish over the wise. He chooses to redeem and save by the sacrifice of his own son. He chooses to conquer sin, death, and the devil by dying. I mean, there's a lot of interesting, God constantly reverses the natural way we think and the natural order in which we perceive things. But the second reversal, and this is interesting. So the first reversal is younger over the older. The second reversal is Jacob sees clearly. Jacob sees beyond the present by faith, where Joseph does not. And that is a reversal. And I think this is where things get really fascinating, okay? Because let's look at the biblical pattern. Throughout Jacob's life, he seemed to struggle to see beyond the present. He deceived, he grabbed, he schemed, he operated by sight, he trusted his own cunning. He even his famous deception of Isaac shows a man manipulating circumstances, not trusting promises, right? At least to some level, we have to see this don't we see it in some degree? I think we do. I think I'm onto something here. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I think we can say throughout Jacob's life, he struggled to see beyond the present. I think that's fair. I think that's accurate. Think of situations in Jacob's life where he just seemed to be looking at the here, the now. Grab onto this. But look at Joseph in contrast. In fact, I guess you could say, if you want to go back to Jacob, his life is full of short-term strategies, not long-term faith. I think that's fair to say about Jacob. I'm trying to be fair. I don't want to be unfair. I want to be accurate. So throughout Jacob's life, he struggled to see beyond the present. But Joseph, I think he consistently saw beyond circumstances. He interpreted dreams. He forgave his brother. He even declared, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." He held on to promises during slavery, during betrayal, during imprisonment. He saw God's purpose in the midst of chaos. He always, by faith, could see beyond what was happening. He constantly did that. Jacob constantly was like, okay, I got to come up with a plan and a scheme. But in Genesis 48, don't we see something flipping here? Don't we see a reversal? Joseph, the man who saw the invisible hand of God more clearly than maybe any patriarch before him, can't seem to see what God is doing. He insists, no, not so, my father. No. Manasseh is the firstborn. You got to go with the firstborn. He can't seem to see beyond, the firstborn gets it. He can't seem to see beyond it. Joseph can't seem to imagine a future where the normal order is reversed. Joseph seems to be focused on what seems to be obvious, what is culturally appropriate, what is traditionally expected. Meanwhile, Jacob suddenly seems to have astonishing clarity. The man who is weak, the man who is dying, the man who spent his life stumbling, deceiving, fearing, limping, now sees deeper than Joseph does. Jacob says, I know it, my son, I know it. See, this is not the old Jacob. This is the Jacob of Hebrews 11:21. The Jacob who finally, at the end of his life, is looking beyond the present and trusting the future that God had promised. This is the real reversal underneath the reversal. The father who lived by sight dies by faith. The son who lived by faith all of a sudden is living by sight. That's profound. Let me state it again, because I think you should write this down, because I think it's rather profound. The father, Jacob, who seemed to live by sight, now seems to be ready to die by faith. And Joseph, the son, who lived by faith, suddenly can only live by sight. Now, why is that significant? Because what determines when we live by sight or live by faith? What determines when you are living by faith or living by sight? What determines it? Is it your theology? Is it how good your church is? I think sometimes what determines when you live by faith or live by sight is the circumstance you find yourself in. See, when you're ready to die, when you got 1 foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, right? When you're about dead, well, it's easy to see by faith because everything here is gone. Well, what I see by sight, it's disappearing, it's gone. I've got to cling to something by faith because I got nothing left here. I'm leaning on a cane. I'm leaning on my staff because I'm paraphrasing. I'm kind of, exaggerating. I'm 5 seconds away from dying. When all you know is death, then it's easy to see by faith. But when you are living in the middle of a circumstance, now sometimes when you're living and you're young, but all the circumstances around you are garbage and trash and life is falling apart and you don't have anything. Sometimes it's easy to see by faith because, once again, you don't have anything. But when things are going pretty good, things are going pretty well, everything's going pretty good in your life, it's sometimes very hard to then see by faith. I think we see by faith when faith is all we have left. We see by sight when we have plenty of sight left. Oh, come on. I think that's much truer than we want to admit. We have a tendency to see by faith when faith is all that we have left because everything else is gone. And we have a tendency to see by sight when we have plenty of sight and plenty of things to see. And Joseph in this moment, well, he doesn't seem to be in a horrible situation anymore, right? Things seem to be going pretty good in Joseph's life. And all of a sudden he's like, whoa. He's not seeing by faith. He sees by sight because everything's going pretty good. And he's like, no. Bless the older, bless the firstborn. That's the way it's supposed to be. And God uses Jacob here, the one who's now seeing by faith. He does not use Joseph here to declare the future. Because can you declare the future if all you're doing is walking by sight? No, you can't, because rarely the future is seen by sight, especially in this particular context. So I think there's a great theological significance. There's a double reversal in Genesis 48. Not just the one of crossing arms, it's a switch. It's like a Freaky Friday switch. Jacob now is acting more like Joseph, and Joseph is acting more like Jacob as far as how they've acted in the past. So what is the theological significance in all of this? Well, God's purposes doesn't always follow human optics or human expectations. Joseph is not wrong here to assume that the firstborn should receive the greatest blessing. Every cultural expectation tells him that's the way it's supposed to be. But God is not bound by cultural expectations. And you can never allow yourself to be blinded by cultural expectations. That is a sermon right there, ladies and gentlemen. I almost want to write that down. I didn't even think about it, but I want to write that down. Don't allow yourself to ever be blinded by cultural expectations. Now, what you'll say is, well, culture says all of these ridiculous things, and I go against culture because I'm a Christian. Of course you're going to do that. No. Get really close to your home. What are the cultural expectations and the cultural way of doing things that has greatly influenced you? Don't worry about other people's cultures. No. Worry about you. Because what I have seen within conservative Christianity, especially here in West Texas, is for them, their cultural expectation in many cases is to be pro-Republican, pro-Trump, pro-gun, and they somehow merge that with their Christianity. But God is not bound by your cultural expectations. Christianity is not bound by your cultural expectations, and you should not read Christianity in light of your cultural expectations, because your cultural expectations are irrelevant, especially if you are a Christian, because you're not of this world. You are a pilgrim, so your cultural expectation as a Christian should be heavenly cultural expectation, not earthly. So you have to forget that you are a Texan, that you are from the South, or you're from Portland. No. Your Christianity should not reflect your culture. Your Christianity should transcend your culture. Joseph is not wrong from the cultural expectation to assume, well, you got to bless the firstborn. That's how we do things. Now, it's somewhat disingenuous, and we'll get to that in a minute. The pattern seems to be consistent. God constantly chooses in an unexpected way to demonstrate his sovereignty, not ours. We expect, choose the powerful. He chooses the weak. Choose the smart. He chooses the weak. He chooses the foolish. He chooses to be born as a baby in a manger, not arrive on clouds and take the throne. That destroyed all expectations. Wait, God as a baby? What? Who came up with this idea? Wait, God in the flesh is going to be spat upon, beat, brutalized, mocked with a crown of thorns, and then murdered? That's really the way God would do things. I mean, he is God, right? He defies not only cultural expectations, all of our expectations. So God's purposes do not follow human optics or human expectations. God sometimes gives greater clarity at the end of a believer's life. I don't think Jacob's sudden clarity is sentimental. I think it's theological. I think it's covenantal. I think it's spiritual. And I think that's why Hebrews 11 emphasizes the dying moment. Hebrews 11 doesn't emphasize Jacob's life. It just takes this one moment going, there is faith. Jacob's greatest act of faith occurs in his weakest physical moment. And I think sometimes that's when faith becomes most clear. When we're stripped of our strength, we're stripped of when we're stripped of everything, faith is all you have left. So I think we can see that God's purposes don't always follow human optics or human expectations. I think secondly, we can see that God sometimes gives greater clarity at the end of a believer's life. I just think clarity sometimes shows up. I think a clarity is greatly determined by circumstances. It really is. I think number three, even the best believer sometimes fails to see what God is doing. Joseph is not unspiritual. Joseph is not sinful. He's not being rebellious per se. He simply assumes visible order equals God's order. Tradition equals destiny. Obvious structure equals divine structure. And of course, all of these assumptions are wrong. But at the same time, though, I get a little bothered here because, come on, Joseph, if anyone should know that visible order does not equal God's order, it should be Joseph. If anyone should know that tradition does not equal destiny, it should be Joseph. If anyone knows obvious structure does not equal divine structure, it should be Joseph. So if anyone knows, God delights, or God seems to, I don't know the best way I should say it. God seems to, at many times, overturn what is obvious from a human standpoint. And Joseph should know that. So even the best believers can fail to see it. Why? Because we're fleshly. And we're fleshly. We think fleshly. We walk in the flesh. We see things by sight, not by faith. That's our natural operating system. All right. Another thing, faith is not about understanding everything. It's about trusting God. Jacob trusts the unseen future God is revealing. That's why he gives this blessing. He's trusting this unseen future. Joseph is trusting the visible structure, which seems reasonable. Now, both men love God. Both men serve God. But at this moment, Jacob is aligned with God's surprising pattern, and Joseph is aligned with human expectation. And that's our life fluctuates, and this is a reversal within a reversal, and we live within this never-ending reversal. Sometimes I see faith, I see things by faith, and sometimes I don't even know if I have any faith. I just see things by sight. That's life. That's what life is this struggle and this never-ending reversal in our own lives. Sometimes we're a little bit like Jacob, sometimes we're like a little bit like Joseph, but that is true of all the different stages in their life, and we fluctuate between the two. Now, how does all of this enrich Hebrews 11:21? I think the verse now explodes with meaning. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph. This blessing is not sentimental or sentiment. It's not tradition. It's not favoritism. It's not a final speech. It's not a symbolic gesture. It's prophecy. It's covenantal continuity. It's theological reversal, and it's alignment with God's upside down choosing, which he does constantly. And the posture leaning on the staff, it's not the point. The faith expressed in the blessing and the blessing reversal is. So all of this began with a tiny devotional in Hebrews 11:21. A devotional that made me stop and go, wait a minute, is this symbolical? Is this symbolic? Symbolical. Why do I keep saying symbolical? I don't know. Is it symbolic? Is that staff that he's leaning on important? What is the emphasis? Why is Hebrews highlighting this moment? And can Hebrews 11 be understood without Genesis 48? And we learned very quickly that no, it cannot. Hebrews 11:21 requires Genesis 48. Because without Genesis 48, we miss the covenant context. We miss the birth order reversal. We miss the prophetic nature of the blessing. We miss the surprise of God's choosing. And we miss the double reversal between Jacob and Joseph. This is not about leaning on a staff. It's not about posture. It's not about blessing your children before you die. It's about a dying patriarch speaking future covenant truth that contradicts human expectation, upholds God's sovereign pattern, and displays faith and promises he would never live to see. In the end, Jacob, the deceiver, the struggler, the limper, dies with more spiritual clarity than he ever lived with. And Joseph, the man of providence, at least for a moment, a time, even for a moment, he can seem to see only the visible. A reversal within a reversal. But wait. There's more. Because something bothered me greatly in the Genesis 48 narrative. I'm going to go back to Genesis 48. I've alluded to it now numerous times. I've hinted at it, but I'm going to just really drive the point home now here, okay? Genesis 48:17. I'm going to read it from this translation. But Joseph was upset. But Joseph was upset. I'm sorry. As soon as I heard that, all I could think of, isn't it ironic? Don't you think? I know I'm quoting a song, okay? I know Alanis Morissette. Isn't it ironic? It is. It is. I'm like, whoa. Joseph, of all the people who could be upset, you're the last one to be upset about this reversal of the younger over the older. Why? All of a sudden you're upset about it? I'm trying to jump into my Bible. I'm trying to go the Aha video. Okay, you remember that video from, okay, another musical reference. Okay, forget the musical references. I'm like, no, let me in. Joseph, we gotta talk. Come on, buddy. Of all the people, you're upset because the younger over the older? Are you kidding me right now? So it's definitely ironic. But is this an intentional thing in the narrative? Is this a theologically loaded thing? Is it intentional that we're seeing that Joseph is upset? Is it an accident, or is this a layer in the entire Genesis 37 through 50 cycle? Is this a layer that I'm supposed to see? Maybe the irony is a part of the biblical design. Let's walk through this quickly, okay? We're already at 38 minutes, but I think because this is almost like this is just crazy to me. When I see Joseph is upset, I'm like, whoa. And I know I read differently than everyone else. I have long conversations, and I feel like I'm in the narrative, and I talk back, and I walk and I pace. I know you're saying you're overly dramatic. Whoa. Settle down, Sally. Don't be saying I'm over dramatic. I will be greatly offended by that. In fact, I will be overly dramatic in how offended I am. Okay, no. All right, I'm making your point. No, but I do when I read the text, I don't just read words on a page. I feel, I see, I experience, I'm there. The same thing is true when I read it. Same thing's true when I listen to music and I look at the lyrics. I feel, I see, I'm always drawn in. Same with a movie. I talk to the screen, I get up, I pace, right? I'm like, whoa, what? I allow myself to just get taken in. It's just my personality. That doesn't mean that people like me are more spiritual than people who don't do that. Others, you're just calm. It's no big deal. It's just words on a page. I can't understand you. You can't understand me. We're all wired radically different. My way is obviously the best way, okay? I'm sorry for the rest of you who seem to have no passion or zeal in your life and you're dead on the inside, okay? You're comfortably numb, but some of us, I know, we kind of exhaust everyone else because we're always going crazy. Okay, but come on, Joseph, you're upset. Here we go. I think this is a factual statement. Joseph's reaction is ironically inconsistent with his own story. Can anyone disagree with me? Joseph's reaction is ironically inconsistent with his own story. Joseph objects strongly in Genesis 48. Because this shows that he is seeing by sight, not by faith. He's like, not, again, Genesis 48:16, not so, my father, this one is the firstborn. Now you can put exclamation points there. I don't know if he's yelling it. I don't know if he's saying it calmly, but he's definitely objecting. But think about, Joseph's own life. Joseph was chosen over his older brothers. Reuben was older, Simeon was older, Levi was older, Judah was older. What's some of the other brothers? Dan, was it Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, they're all older. Joseph is what, like the 11th son somewhere? My math is bad. It's a number. But yet, Joseph, the younger, he receives the dreams. He receives the favor. He receives the coat of many colors. He seems to get the leadership. He seems to get the destiny. He seems to get the salvation role. He ends up with the double portion, Ephraim and Manasseh. If birth order was determining blessing, Joseph should have been a nobody of a nobody of a nobody of a nobody of a nobody. He would have been getting the hand-me-downs of the hand-me-downs of the hand-me-downs. But he's like, bum, 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 I'm Joseph. I'm not that he was saying that way, but that's how the story kind of presents it. Now, there's lots of suffering, but ultimately he rises to power. He is blessed amongst everyone else, and his brothers bow down to him. And now Joseph's like, stop. No. It can't be the younger over the older. Joseph, what are you doing? Isn't it ironic that you're going against you're being inconsistent with your own story? Do you not remember your own story? I think instead of Joseph being a nobody, he was exalted in a spectacular way by God. So Joseph's protest in Genesis 48, come on. Isn't it absolutely just dripping with irony? It's like the narrative is like, come on, everyone should be like, whoa, wait, come on, right? Shouldn't we? I think a second thing is that, I think this is true. Isn't Joseph kind of defending the very system that God overturned in his own life? He's defending this system that it has to be the firstborn, but he's the very product of God overturning that very system, but now he's defending the very system that God overturned for him. Is it only good for God to overturn it for Joseph, but not to overturn it with his sons? Joseph is arguing for a conventional order. Manasseh is the firstborn. Put your right hand on the proper head. But Joseph's entire story is an attack upon that order. God overturned birth order. God overturned family structure. God overturned power dynamics. God overturned expectations about who should lead. And God overturned the obvious candidate for blessing. Joseph is the poster child of God choosing the unexpected. And yet, all of a sudden, in this moment, Joseph defends a worldview that would have erased him from the story, from the narrative completely. This is profoundly ironic, but it is profoundly human. Isn't it? God's grace for me, not God's grace for you. For me, forgiveness, love, long-suffering, understanding, patience, eternal life, heaven, even though I deserve hell. But for you, no forgiveness, no second chance, you're finished. Okay, that's how we do so. Joseph, the poster child, is like, no. We go back to the system that would have completely erased me. Come on. Hey, God, I know you overruled the entire system for me and put me in charge here in Egypt, but come on now. We're not going to continue that same system here. It's got to be my older son. Come on. And I think I kind of just hinted at this. I think a third point here is that Joseph's protest shows how easy it is to forget the very grace that shaped our own lives. I think this is kind of the theological punch in the gut and this reversal within a reversal within a reversal. Joseph, of all people, should remember God chooses differently because he chose me. God blesses unconventionally because, well, I was the blessed one here. God reverses expectations. See me. God lifts the younger, the weaker, the unlikely. See me. God's choosing as sovereign, not traditional. See me. But in Genesis 48, Joseph is like, well, I mean, come on. What's obvious? You got to choose the older. I mean, what's customary? You got to choose the older. What fits cultural norms? You got to choose the older. What makes sense? You got to choose the older. He seems to forget at the very thing that defines his own story. Now, we all do that. Come on, we all do that. We forget the grace that lifted us. Don't we? We want God's perfect love as we give other people, I don't know what we call it. Is that even love? I don't know. It's definitely questionable. We want God's never-ending mercy and forgiveness. And we want God not only to give us a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, a fifth chance, because you live in perpetual sin, but someone else, you're like, sorry, the end. One mistake, you're finished. How wonderful. Do we not sometimes defend the very structures that would bury us, but we use them to bury someone else? I don't know. We have an instinct to cling to what seems right, even when God has upended that very idea in your own life and your past. Maybe Joseph's protest is a mirror of our own hearts. And I think it shows Joseph. You talk about the reversal and the reversal. Joseph is looking at everything in the most fleshly way. He's not seeing anything by faith. And then I think number 4, this irony in the text, because the text is dripping with irony, isn't not highlighting the significance of Jacob's clarity. Joseph's apparent blindness makes Jacob's clarity even looks more clear. I think this is a part of the double reversal that I was trying to stress, right? For most of their lives, Joseph sees, Jacob doesn't. But at the end, Jacob sees, Joseph doesn't. The irony, how would I say it? Sharpens the contrast. That's a good way of putting it. The irony sharpens the contrast. Joseph, who once saw God in everything, now sees only tradition. Jacob, who once schemed according to tradition, now sees God's unexpected choosing. The entire narrative has flipped. Now, this is why Hebrews does not mention the reversal, but it does highlight the blessing as an act of faith. Jacob sees God's pattern by faith. Joseph, for some weird reason, now can only see man's patterns or man's pattern. One of them aligns with God in this moment, and it's not Joseph, it's Jacob. And I guess maybe the last point, the Bible intentionally does these layers of irony sometimes. And it's not a coincidence, I don't think. Biblical narratives sometimes use irony to, number 1, expose human blindness. That's sometimes why the Bible narratives use irony, to expose human blindness, to show the limits of human wisdom, to highlight God's sovereignty, and to reinforce covenantal patterns. Sometimes it sets up the Christological themes. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Genesis at times seems to love irony. in this moment with Joseph? No, I'm upset. It's not the younger, it's the older. Is this not a great example of irony in Old Testament narrative? This may be the shining example of it. The reversal, then the reversal within that reversal, and then a reversal to really highlight the reversal within the reversal. If you think about it, so the first reversal is God choosing the younger over the older. The next reversal is how Jacob seems to see by faith and Joseph seems to have gone completely blind. And then what highlights the second reversal is kind of this really emphasized reversal in Joseph's entire attitude, that he gets upset. It's a reversal. He's getting upset about the very thing that he benefited from. There's like 3 reversals going on here in Genesis 48. Now, what have you learned today from all of this? Well, hopefully something beneficial. All right. Now, just think, it all started 3 minutes, 48 seconds. Has turned into basically 3 hours and 48 minutes. I know the math does not work out perfectly, but I'm just using it as an illustrative purpose because it's probably come close if I break it down. I know it's definitely over 2 hours, but it just shows you how the smallest little devotional can turn into great time in the Word of God if you will use it that way. All right. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a wonderful Tuesday, December the 2nd. We'll see. I know I've spent all of this time and we've not gotten things done that we need to get done. So I will try to get back to them as soon as I can. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a wonderful, 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 wonderful day. God bless.